Hey guys, it's your lady, aka Geek XX Chic, and I'm back with another reaction to Titans. We are now on episode 8. Wow, 8 episodes in already, and this episode is called Jericho. Whoo, child. In the last couple of episodes, we've found out that Jericho, aka Deathstroke's son, has been kind of the linchpin in what exploded into just a maelstrom of chaos 5 years ago with the group. And yes, Garth's death was what maybe triggered it, but Jericho's death is apparently what had the impact that's created this, assumably, lifelong vendetta that Deathstroke's going to have against not only the Titans, but Dick Grayson in particular. And also we know that that's fueling, or so we know so far, it's fueling Rose's storyline as well. But last episode, which was hilarious, and I ranted all about it in the review, we got to see that Dick's been struggling with this on his conscience. However Jericho died, whether it was directly because of something that he did or something that of a situation that he created for him to be in, either way, Dick is feeling a large amount of guilt around how Jericho died, and it's something that he's not shared with the team. And as a result, it had the team completely dissolve and go their own separate ways 5 years ago, and now they've all been brought back by Deathstroke to basically exact revenge in one way or another. So I'm hoping in this episode, as I said in the last review, that we get a neutral viewpoint of some kind of what happened with Jericho. I'm really hoping that we're finally gonna get the source of at least why Deathstroke feels the way that he does about Jericho's death, why Dick feels the way that he does, and of course, hopefully this will also be an episode that will get Dick's confession to the group about what went down and how he feels he's responsible, so that this wall that he's built up between them can finally be blown away and they can work together as a team, because they're going to need to. So without further ado, let's get into this episode, because honestly, I'm very excited to see where it leads, and we will chat about it afterwards. Okay? Let's boot. Starting out the episode in darkness. Shock. Why are you holding up? Who actually has a lantern anymore? I was told he couldn't talk. Did he just try to scream and nothing happened? Aww. This took a turn. Y'all, this took a real turn. How the heck did we go from walking around the streets of San Francisco to The Purge? Yo, Jericho, I don't know what kind of stuff you watching before bed, but we need to cut that out. Who dreams about cannibalism? Seems like a sweet kid. It's gonna make this suck, isn't it?
You okay?
I hate this.
This is the only way. Trust me.
So they knew?
Never dance again.
Never?
I'm never gonna dance again. Sorry. That looked like they injected that straight into his heart. Yeah. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. Oh no, Satan, not today. Right, okay, it's like that. Don't pick, what? So whatever they injected him with just makes him nasty. Okay. Oh, here we go. Our Punisher montage. With the nasty apple. Did my bro just kill them with ricochets? Okay. That's some next level stuff. All right, Rambo, calm down.
You look tired.
Well, I did a lot of killing.
You're home.
First one?
Yeah, I want to drink too. Wash away all this guilt.
Dad. That was Omaha, Mr. Wilson. It's okay, honey.
Clearly isn't.
People are gonna leave now. It's been a terrible misunderstanding.
Dad, please.
You just murdered people in front of your child.
Okay, just...
So that was his dad's fault.
You'd be surprised what a kid can pick up. The sponges. All ears and eyes.
Facts.
And also information he has stored up waiting to spill.
leave Jericho out of it.
Can anyone please leave Jericho out of it? Anyone? I like this female secret service we got going on right now. Here come the ladies in black.
It was me.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Not really though, because I'm still alive and oh no, too soon.
This means you'll be leaving for the mascara? Far from it.
Revenge is a hell of a drug.
It's important his name is Deathstroke. Yes, we know.
Yeah, she's
And
like,
I'll handle
girl, I knew you had a crush on Gar before you did. You really think that I wouldn't know that the shooter was Deathstroke? I mean...
Brains. Hey, watch it, asshole. That was so rude of me. Here, let me buy that.
So he already had powers. His dad did that.
Sorry.
Thanks.
I have a tiny penis.
Thank you. We all knew it, but he needed to say it. So...
Here.
Oh.
Dance.
Dance, 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 dance. Oh, but you had such perfect form.
What they do? What they say?
This is amazing.
No idea.
That's awesome.
No way.
First Bruce, now this.
Patrice is different.
Okay,
Cool, right?
there we go.
Like you.
You will never be like me.
God, I hope not.
He wants to be out there in the world to find his people. But for him, it's not going to be so easy. He's a freak.
You know he can hear, right?
But there's something we need to tell you first.
Like we've been using you so we can murder your father.
I haven't exactly been clear.
Bygones?
If they're mixed up with your father, you can't trust them. I lied to you. Because you've always idolized him. I know
That's not
how
a
much you love him.
good
I didn't want to take
excuse.
that away from
What do you want me to do?
Die!
my son.
I mean,
Because a son needs to believe certain things about his father in order to become a man himself.
but not if they're
I
false.
preserved in him what he needed to believe about you.
No, you just lied. So where is Rose in this situation?
Sorry, I don't read sign language.
Universal.
Titans. They seriously call themselves that. The Titans were tragic Greek
He
figures.
calls himself Deathstroke.
Yeah, I know. Go fuck myself.
I'm kind of in a hate, slightly don't hate relationship with Wintergreen.
You told me be Batman. Remember?
Really, Dick?
Wrong.
You're gonna blame her now. Okay. This is why you need a core in your life to call you on your bullshit, sir. Oh, no, he was a good kid. This would be more scary if I didn't know that Donna clearly survived. Now, see, Donna, this will be the point where you start to think, wow, he just killed a bunch of really super powerful girls, like a bunch of them. Maybe I shouldn't just rush in and think I can handle this, but okay. Okay. I see you, Deathstroke. Ow. Yeah, Deathstroke don't play nice, sweetie. He play for keeps. Break it. Oh, he pulled an Arya Stark, girl. Donna, I feel badly for you, but you should have learned. Ah, this is why he had Dick come here last week. It's all coming together. Is this where Jericho died?
Take care of Donna.
Really, Dick? This is the time? Okay. I don't want it.
I'm so sorry, son.
Keep your murder bracelet, please. Can't blame Jericho. Relationships with parents are screwed up like that.
You did this? You told him we were meeting?
Oh, you put him in the middle.
I can see right through you.
You can't say nothing with one eye!
Murder is far more honorable than betrayal.
Is it? I don't think they can be scaled equally. Hey, Dick, he took out Donna and Titans. Do you really... Why are they so dumb? Yeah, you're angry as well, Dick, which is not great. Ooh! Ah, ow. I felt that in my chesticle. You think that's gonna work on Deathstroke? Really? He heard you breathing from a block away. What? This weapon though! Why am I screaming? Jericho gets in the way, doesn't he? Yep. Yeah. What did you think was gonna happen? You don't know your son at all. So it was what I thought. Dick created the situation and Deathstroke didn't. And so ended Titan Tower. Look at the sweet bright-eyed kid. Wow, well done, show. That was a good way to tell a story. Yes, Toa Frazier, who directed this, good job. And who wrote this? Who wrote this? They need props too. Written by Kate, written by a woman, hell yes, Kate McCarthy. You slayed it. It was well done. This was a great episode. This was really, really good. I was hoping for this. If you watched my reaction last week, you know that I said I need to see what happened. I'm getting something from Dick. I'm getting something from Deathstroke. I need to see what really went down here. And so I predicted, and I think the show left some pretty huge breadcrumbs that this is basically the way things went down. But now we know for sure as the audience exactly how things happened. Dick created the situation and Deathstroke was the one who actually, well, I was gonna say pulled the trigger, but in this case, you know, made the final blow. It's an interesting situation because, well, Deathstroke's not wrong in the sense of this wouldn't have happened if Jericho had not been involved. Well, I shouldn't say that. We don't know that things wouldn't have escalated or things couldn't have, happened the way they did. But essentially, it was the Titans bringing him in and using him that created a situation for Jericho to potentially ever be in the way of Deathstroke's blade. It was this episode brings up so many gray areas that happen in these situations. Like, this whole situation is murky. The whole situation is murky. No one is completely innocent in this situation. None of the Titans, and obviously not Deathstroke. Where to begin? This was really, really good. First of all, R.I.P. Jericho, potentially. Knowing that we saw he had his abilities, which thank you so many of you in the comments, let me know what Jericho's abilities were in the comics, and we weren't sure whether or not they were going to go there in the series, but clearly they did. Knowing what his abilities are, it's very possible that Jericho did body jump, or that his abilities allowed his consciousness to survive the fatal wound, but also considering the fact that he has that cocktail inside of his body, maybe they thought he died and he could have potentially woken up hours later in the morgue, right? There's so many things that could have potentially happened, but we're going to talk about that later. For now, let's talk about this actual story of Dick using Jericho and the team knowing that that's what he was willing to do. So they all were in on it. I wasn't sure in the past episodes. I couldn't tell whether or not they knew that it was Deathstroke's son or not, but they clearly all did. So this is why I'm a little bit curious as to why in the last episode, we kept seeing Dick fighting with his conscience about whether or not to tell the team. I thought he had not told the team that Jericho had died, in this situation. But the way this episode just ended, it almost made it seem like the team did know. But I could be completely wrong about that. Maybe they just knew that, oh, you know what? Maybe Dick lied. Now that I think about it, maybe Dick lied, came back from that fight and said that Deathstroke killed his son. Because the way it was set up, Dick could have easily said that by the time he showed up, Jericho was already dead. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he did that because he felt guilty or let the team assume that that's what happened. Okay, that makes more sense because I'm like, based on that, they already knew. Anyway, looking at the situation, all the team has a little bit of blood on their hands in the sense of, they all knew who he was and they brought him in. And at first, they all justified it with the idea that, well, he's in cahoots with his father. He knows his father is a murderer and he's not, turning him into the police or something. So it's perfectly okay for us to use this completely separate person to get to someone else. So that's where they all went wrong in the first place. But of course, once they saw him and saw that he actually was a good kid and
found out that he actually had no relationship with his father and that he had no idea that his father was an assassin, as Donna said, Dawn said, because Donna, of course, was in Rage Brain. Dawn was like, no, we need to end this. We shouldn't have done it in the first place, but now that we know that this kid is actually a good kid and that his mom has kept him away from all this and he has no idea, we really should stop this because we're using him, beyond that, because as we saw in this episode, it was beautifully acted, by the way, by the actor who plays Jericho, of this kid who's he's been so lost, this typical story that we've seen of a child who really looks for a parent's approval. You know, his dad, the war hero, he would have probably put up on a pedestal. Society would put up on a pedestal. And of course, as children, we just want to connect with our parents, and boys especially, their father figure. All he wanted was to impress his dad and for his dad to show him some affection. And especially, I mean, I'm not a child of a military person, but I've known many of them, and I know that a lot of them have dealt with feelings that I can't even imagine, of when their parents are deployed, not knowing if they're going to come back, that horrible wondering, you know, anytime the phone rings, if that's, you know, the call that they're going to hear that, you know, that parent's not coming back. So you add that stress along with just wanting the approval of your parents, and Jericho is always in a very fragile position. You know, his father comes back from war, and then, you know, he disappears again. You know, he's missing birthdays. He's not emotionally or physically there for him. And we've just got this lost kid who's trying to be a good kid, but also desperate for the love and approval of his father. And that's just something that I think a lot of us can relate to, whether or not we have fathers that are close, or parents that are close to us or not. We all struggle, I think, to a degree of trying to find that approval and that sense of feeling like we're loved and accepted by our parents. And Jericho, that's all he really wanted at the heart of everything. And then this fateful thing happens where his father's lifestyle is what ends up getting him almost killed, but taking away his ability to speak. And I think it's such a disservice that his mom allowed the lie to continue. I'm sorry, this problem with my building is still going on, so I'm sorry that weird noise is just gonna come and go. I apologize. His mom perpetuating this lie that his father wanted to be kept really didn't do Jericho a service. All he knows is that people came looking for his father, he ended up with no voice, and then his dad disappears out of his life, no answers, no explanations. And what's more is that, at least if he had known what his father had done at that point, he could have taken the steps, you know, to reconcile that what happened wasn't necessarily directly, you know, the fault of what was going, you know what I mean? Like, he could have at least put the pieces together, like, okay, dad chose this life, he thought it was separate, they merged one day, and it almost killed me, but now he's staying away for our safety. But that's not what he got, right? All he got was that I got this horrible life-threatening injury, and then my dad was gone. Imagine how that would make you feel as a kid, right? You would feel like, oh my gosh, my dad didn't even love me enough to stick around and explain or help me recover and deal with the fact that my life is different now that I'm mute, right? Like, there's just, I can just imagine, like, this poor kid just got blow after blow, and he was just in such an emotionally fragile place for so long. And then on top of that, as we saw in the first episode we were introduced to him in, they were living in fear. They were always wondering who was coming after them, who could potentially try to stalk them or hurt them again. So it was a lot. Jericho was dealing with a lot, which obviously isolated him in a lot of ways. And then here come the Titans. Here comes Dick with his smiley, bright face, and this group of people who he feels comfortable with enough to actually share his story and tell them and not feel judged. And then even to the point where he lets them see he didn't really let them see, but when he has his ability, he actually shows them, and he feels like he can feel safe telling them this. Like, it's just such a sad situation. And the fact that Dawn saw this coming a mile away, that like, we need to stop this because this kid is a good kid and we're going to break him even more. But then I understand with the whole thing with Dick and seeing him with the powers, because we've seen that. Like, Dick is a chronic rescuer of the helpless, or a rescuer of, you know, who he thinks needs guidance. That's just always been his thing. In the comics and in the show, we've seen that. So when he saw Jericho and he could see what he can do, knowing what he knew about him already, it was very Dick-like for him to be like, yes, let me take him in, let us train him as a Titan so he doesn't use this ability to potentially hurt people, which was a very real possibility, let's be real. Even though Jericho hadn't really used it for evil that we know of, someone with his emotional fragility and the history that he had could potentially get tipped towards using it for wrong purposes. Although some could argue that the Titans using it to fight crime could also be considered improper use. But that's a whole other discussion. That didn't feel unauthentic to me, but I mean, I agree with Dawn when she brought out to him, like, the timing is a bit suspect. You realize that, considering what we've done, this doesn't look like it's coming from a completely altruistic place. And also, you still do have an ulterior motive here. You're not 100% done with trying to get information out of this kid or leverage him. And while he tried to convince, well, let's face it, mostly himself, that was the case, he wasn't willing to let Jericho go. Him and Donna were very much on the same wavelength in this episode. And it's interesting because they were on the same wavelength for two different reasons. Like, Donna, we know, it's pretty pure and simple. She wanted straight up revenge. She just All she saw was red, and she just wanted Deathstroke dead at any cost. But conversely, that wasn't why Dick was more coming from that place. The same man who allowed that man who, you know, caused the chain of events that got his parents killed, and the way he let him get killed by the rival gang that day, right? Where he didn't directly do it, but, you know, he let it happen. That same thirsty for vengeance, that dark place that Dick has inside of him, it was fueled by this, right? Obviously, he cared about Gar, but let's face it, if we were looking at between, you know, Donna and Gar, who really had the more emotional claim there, I think Donna would win, right? So I think, again, Dick's driver was more that dark place, that need to get his vengeance, that need to fix this wrong, because for him it was probably very much reminiscent of what he went through with losing his family and the person who did it getting away. But yeah, just seeing how all that came together, and then just watching Jericho go through this and be so, you know, desperate to fit in and desperate, you know, obviously he looked at Dick and he saw that father figure that he had wanted for so long. And of course with Dick coming clean, not his idea sadly, but coming clean about what he did and why he did it, that must have felt so good for him, because Jericho was smart enough to know that there were pieces missing with his own father's story. So of course he was absolutely just drunk with the idea that this person was being honest with him, he was taking him under his wing, was accepting him for his, you know, his inability to have a voice, and also with his superpowers, like all these things that were like his dream come true for his father were being realized, or so he thought, through Dick. So of course he jumped at the idea of becoming a Titan. Plus, who doesn't want to be like a mass superhero, right? That's kind of every teenage boy's dream as well. So it was the perfect recipe for disaster. And Dick kind of knew that. You know, he knew deep down that it was a perfect manipulation tactic, even though he tried to tell himself it was for the greater good. And so it was just seeing that was his side of the story. I do understand, as I said, there was blood on everyone's hands. It was probably a little heavier on Dick and Donna's, in the sense of that they didn't really care about how this was going to affect Jericho. Like, they very much had a dismissive attitude of like the fact that this could mess him up even more and develop even deeper and worse trust issues in him. But when you see it from this lens, you can see that, as I said, I don't think it was completely all manipulation. I do think that the Dick that we know absolutely wanted to help Jericho and take him under his wing, and that, you know, we saw that they all genuinely liked him. He was a good kid with a good heart. The tactics, you know, telling him the truth like that, and not encouraging him, for example, to go and talk to his mom and not just alienate her and shut that door. Because we sat in there, and in the reaction I kind of came for his mom and was like, ooh, you know, she's kind of part of this too. A little blood guilt goes on mama's hands too for sending Deathstroke, like, go get my boy and bring him back like he's a dog or something. Like, she didn't want to own up to the fact that she lied for her own reasons. And we might as well just talk about that for a minute, because we didn't see a lot of it. But Jericho's mom, you know, from the first time we saw her, it seemed like she was very protective of him and that she was just trying to keep him safe. But the lie that she perpetuated about not explaining to him exactly why what happened to him with being nearly killed happened, and why his dad really took off. She said she did it for Jericho. She didn't. She did it for herself, and possibly because a part of her still is in love with, or loved, Slade. I understand her not necessarily right out of the hospital wanting to tell him, oh, by the way, your dad's an assassin and this is why this happened. But she should have told him the truth, because he's not a dummy. He's a person with intellect, and he would have had questions. And honestly, she would have been better off sitting him down and saying, listen, your dad made some really bad choices after he got out of the military. He didn't tell us. That's what caused this to happen. He obviously didn't want it to happen. There's no way he could have anticipated this. He did not want it to happen, but it did. And he's staying away right now because he realizes now that these two worlds have crossed. He thought he could keep them separate. That clearly didn't happen. That is why he's staying away now. Like, if she had told him the truth, Jericho may have still decided to hate him. Or maybe Jericho would, again, I feel like eventually, especially considering how sweet and how forgiving Jericho seemed as a person, I think Jericho would have been fine. Like, I think he eventually would have come to a place where he came back and was like, okay, I forgive him for what happened, at least that day. He might have still chosen to keep his distance from his dad while he continued to be a murderer, but at least he would have been able to reconcile that whole situation that was very traumatic that happened to him. But his mom kind of robbed him of that by giving him this lie that he was a hero. Like, without getting into too much about that, because I've talked about it enough, lying to your kids just is never the right thing to do. It's one thing to not tell them things, like to wait for the proper time to tell the truth, but do not lie to them, because lies always come out in some way. Almost always they come out. And I mean, as you saw, it shattered that trust that he had with his mom, which was unnecessary. That all could have been avoided if she had just told him the truth. Anyways, coming back to, you know, her mom sending Deathstroke out there to round up her son like he doesn't have his own mind or thoughts. That was just a poor decision. Like, I don't know how she thought that was going to turn out. Like, it really made me question. It's like, your husband is an assassin, someone who murders people, and you're going to send him to go and drag your son back forcibly. What do you think is going to happen? She clearly knew that that blood could potentially be spilt, and she didn't care, just as long as she got her son back. There's some issues there with their mama that I'm very curious about. And also, where the heck was Rose at this point? Like, do they have a different mama? I'm wondering why we did not see any Rose. I don't know. Anyways, that's a question for any of you out there who know if there's a different mama involved, or if, I don't know, what went wrong with Rose or whatever, but we did not see any hide nor hair of her. Just seeing all that from Dick's side of things, it was very understandable how everything, the way it unfolded, how in the end that Dick let that dark place that drives her revenge at all costs take over him. And that's why, instead of staying with Donna, who at the moment could have been bleeding out, he decided to go and try to get that revenge. And again, you know, just like Donna, and I screamed in the episode, and then same thing with him. It's like, dude, this man took out a bunch of Amazons like it was nothing. He all but completely broke Donna, who is superpowered. You, mortal Dick Grayson, how do you think you're going to come up against this guy? After you find out, by the way, that Jericho has superpowers because of things that happened to him in the military, how do you think you're going to be able to just walk up with your Robin tricks and take him out? Like, so I understand, you know, that's really where Dick went wrong again, is that if he had just stayed with Donna in that moment and let Jericho figure things out for himself. Jericho was already unsure. For Dick to think that Jericho was just going to always, and I guess in fairness, Dick was looking at it from the perspective that he had with Bruce Wayne, which was the only father figure he really had after his dad died, and that he was carrying so much rage for Dick at that point, he must have thought that Jericho would be the same way. But most people, when it comes to their parents, and even Dick, which he wasn't really to admit at that point, it's a love-hate situation. Even if you have a terrible parent or someone that you perceive as terrible or did terrible things, it's still 50% of your DNA, and it's not as easy as we'd all like to think to just be able to shut our emotions off. So for him, it wasn't that he ever hated his dad. He didn't even hate him when he found out he was a murderer. All of Jericho's issues stem from feeling abandoned and wanting his father's approval, everything. You know, he showed up there at that church because he was like, there's a little part of him was saying, maybe dad's not that bad. Maybe dad isn't a complete cold-hearted killer the way that they keep saying. Maybe I'm going to hear his side of the story because I've heard the truth now, but now I need to hear it from him, and I want to see his side of the story so I can get it. And maybe just there's just some angle that I can see where I can see the good in this man and the man that raised me and not this monster. And then it just didn't happen. It didn't have a chance to happen, right? I completely understand. In that moment, I think they played that so well in the church that when Dick shows up, and of course now Jericho feels like, okay, now I look like the liar because I told my dad I was coming alone, and you told me that you were going to let me do this, and you weren't going to come for revenge. You're going to let me figure this out. And then conversely, you got Deathstroke going, oh, you brought him here. You told him about this. You betrayed me, and I'm your father. Like, you put this poor kid in an impossible position. Like, it was just Sophie's choice for this poor kid, and it was a horrible place to put him in. He didn't have time to think. He didn't have time to make sense of any of it. And it was life or death right there, too. I felt so bad for him in that moment. I just wanted to reach through the screen and pluck him out and put him in my bosom and just be like, let y'all kill each other. This baby doesn't deserve to be here. And the fact that he stepped back and let the fight happen, like, I really like that they played it that way, because I think in his mind, he just thought, okay, no matter who wins, they're not gonna go through with it. In his mind, Jericho thought, okay, even if Dick wins, he won't kill my dad. Not if I tell him not to. Vice versa, even if my dad wins, in the end, he won't kill my friend. He won't do that. He won't do that in front of me. And then it got bad, and obviously shit got real. And then it came down to that moment, and when he realized his dad was going to do it, he couldn't let him do it. And it wasn't so much that I think he wanted to save Dick. It's that he didn't want his dad to be that person. So it's tragic, because in that moment, obviously Deathstroke has to carry that with the rest of his life, knowing that if he had chosen not to walk this path as an assassin, period, all the things that happened to Jericho would never have happened. But it's easy to blame Dick. It's easy to blame the Titans for getting him involved and shattering the facade he was trying to keep going. While it's true that the Titans did bring Jericho into this situation, and that it probably would not have gone down that way if they hadn't, we know Deathstroke's never going to take full accountability for the fact that none of it would have happened if he wasn't an assassin. So a lot of Deathstroke's anger is not even towards Dick and towards Titans. It's himself. He is fighting a war with himself, but he doesn't have the guts to kill himself. And I mean, that line he gave in there about how murder is more noble than betrayal, what? Betrayal can be forgiven. Betrayal can be fixed. Murder's kind of one way. There's no real coming back from that. I'm glad we got a lot of answers in this episode. It was really deep and sad in a lot of ways, but it explains so much. We see that that was the final straw for the group. Them leaving Titan Tower wasn't so much about Jericho's death as who they became as a team and what they were willing to do. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Dick is going to have to come clean about how Jericho actually died, because I think he might have potentially hid the fact that he went after Deathstroke, or that his fight with Deathstroke is what caused it. And now that we actually know the truth and we have the objective viewpoint, I'm very interested to see how Dick's gonna translate this truth when we hopefully are back to real time next episode. As much as I love this episode, we are back-to-back episodes, kind of, we're not really back-to-back, but we're kind of being taken out of the timeline again, so I want to get back into it. Like I said, maybe Jericho is still in the house. Maybe the ghost in the tower is actually Jericho, and potentially he's been possessing different parts or different people in Titan Tower, you know, as a form of revenge. We'll never know. We're not going to know until we see the rest of the season, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry I rambled a lot, but this episode was super deep on a lot of levels, and I had a lot to say, so sorry about that. Please leave your comments below about how you felt about the episode and how you think this is all going to play out. Please, I'm interested in theories. So if you like this video, guys, please click like, and if you want to see more from this geeky face, please click subscribe. Until next time,